Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are really cutting straight to the core of operational excellence. We're talking about something for anyone managing physical assets, proactive machine safety assessment services.
Right.
It's a topic that I think is often viewed purely as a compliance headache, but we see it as a huge strategic advantage.
That's absolutely right. And I think our mission in this deep dive is to, flip that script for you, the listener. We want to extract the essential knowledge on how organizations can stop managing safety reactively. I mean, fixing things only after an incident or a failed audit,
The expensive way to do it.
the most expensive way, and move toward a proactive system that improves compliance, protects your teams, and really importantly, drives smarter, more profitable investment decisions.
Okay, let's unpack that a little. The fundamental problem we're really tackling here is this chronic misalignment, right? Between the factory floor and the boardroom.
It's a huge gap.
Yeah, how do you keep decades-old legacy equipment running safely and legally when standards are constantly changing without just these massive, unexpected costs? It feels like an impossible balancing act.
It does. And it feels that way because too often safety upgrades feel like an emergency, a sudden disruptive expenditure you weren't planning for.
Right.
So the key takeaway we're defining today is that the value isn't really in the assessment document itself. The value is the objective insight it gives you.
Okay.
And that insight is what lets you prevent the incident before it happens. It turns safety from a compliance burden into a documented operational asset.
I like that framing, a
Yeah.
documented asset. Okay, that shift is powerful. So let's start where the rubber meets the road. Phase one, assessing the physical systems to get a real compliance baseline.
Makes sense.
Let's begin with the most visible part, the guarding assessments.
So when an assessment team visits a facility, the guarding assessment is really their first layer of defense review. They're identifying all the risks related to the current fixed machine guarding.
The barriers, the shields, all of that.
Exactly. The interlocks, everything that's supposed to isolate workers from moving parts.
And this is where I think the process becomes so valuable for the operator on site. It's not just about, slapping a generic guard on a machine.
No, not at all.
The sources show the approach is highly collaborative. It's a partnership with the equipment operators who use this stuff every day. The whole point is to find custom safety solutions that reduce risk without disrupting productivity.
That is the key. It has to integrate seamlessly into the real-world operational flow.
Because if it doesn't,
If a guard gets in the way of routine maintenance or feeding parts, it will inevitably be bypassed. It's just human nature. A good assessment identifies the hazard and then designs a solution that is both compliant and, actually works for the operator.
I can already hear a finance person asking, okay, how much does this disrupt my line? How can I afford the downtime for this?
And that's a fair challenge.
Sure.
But the disruption is mitigated because the initial assessment is, it's purely observational and analytical.
So no shutdown yet.
Right. The real ROI is in avoiding the much greater disruption of an unplanned shutdown after an incident or a failed inspection. Plus, you often find these low-cost, high-impact fixes that you can just implement during scheduled maintenance. No emergency downtime needed.
That makes sense. But compliance is so much more than just static guarding. So next up is a really specialized area, machine stop time and safety distance verification. So my question is, why can't we just rely on the manufacturer's suggested safety distances for, say, a light curtain?
Because those distances, they're often based on ideal factory new conditions.
Ah,
And those conditions simply don't exist after 15 years of hard use. You just cannot rely on those standards alone, especially with legacy gear. This service is crucial because it measures the real-world stopping performance of the machine.
so walk us through how that measurement actually works.
Sure. They use specialized equipment to measure the deceleration time. That's the exact time it takes the machine to physically stop moving once a safety device like a light curtain or an e-stop is triggered.
Yeah.
And that measured time, combined with worker response time and speed of approach, that's what's used to calculate the absolute minimum safe approach distance.
So if I have a press that takes, say, 1.5 seconds to stop, you're calculating exactly how far away my light curtain has to be to make sure I can't possibly reach the danger zone before it stops moving.
Exactly right. And this addresses two huge issues. First, it ensures you are compliant with the standards that mandate this. But second, and I think more importantly, it prevents what we call bypass risk.
Bypass risk. Tell us more about that. That sounds critically dangerous.
It is. A bypass risk happens when the safety device is installed too close to the hazard. So, for example, if a worker can move their hand through a light curtain and reach the crushing point of a machine before the machine is finished stopping,
They've bypassed protection.
they've bypassed the intended protection. If your assessment shows your machine stops in 150 milliseconds, but the safety curtain was placed based on a theoretical 100 milliseconds, your system is failing compliance and, far more dangerously, it's failing the worker. Verification just takes that guesswork out completely.
Okay, that makes it crystal clear why you can't skip that step, especially for high-risk equipment. Now, to wrap up this baseline phase, how does machine safety validation differ from just a risk assessment?
Well, think of it this way. An assessment is the diagnosis. It identifies all the risks and the compliance gaps.
It's a what's wrong list.
Exactly. Validation, on the other hand, is the confirmation step. It's the final proof. It confirms that your existing systems, the new guards, the devices, those calculated stop time distances, not only meet regulatory requirements, but also function reliably under real-world operating conditions.
So it's the final check to make sure everything works as specified under load day after day.
Correct. And the vital output here is the documentation. You get a fully verified, legally defensible safety baseline. And that documentation is just invaluable for future audits, for insurance liability, and for planning future risk reduction. It's peace of mind, documented, and verified.
So now we have the physical baseline. We know exactly where we stand today.
Right.
The next logical step is figuring out the smartest way to budget and plan for where we need to go. And that brings us perfectly into phase 2, strategic and financial planning. Let's start with one of the most proactive steps you can take, the pre-purchase machine guarding assessment.
This is one of the biggest opportunities for immediate financial return. It's all about using insight to save a ton of time and money down the line.
Absolutely. So this assessment looks at new or used machinery, whether you're buying a brand new custom tool or, I don't know, a 20-year-old press from the secondary market before it even shows up at your facility. Why is that so critical?
Because of the hidden costs. We see clients all the time who purchase equipment, especially imported or heavily refurbished stuff, and they just assume it meets domestic safety standards.
And it often doesn't.
It often doesn't. The value of this assessment is identifying risks like, inherent compliance issues, missing safety devices, hidden retrofit costs, and required guarding upgrades.
Can you give us a quick story on what kind of disaster this kind of check avoids?
Certainly. We had a client, they were buying a large specialized cutting machine from a European manufacturer. They just assumed it's new, it must be compliant.
A reasonable assumption, you'd think.
You would think. The pre-purchase assessment revealed the machine lacked dual-channel safety circuitry and proper lockout-tagout provisions required by their domestic standard. So if they had shipped it and installed it, they would face 3 months of mandated downtime, plus an unexpected $80,000 retrofit before they could even hit the start button. The assessment let them negotiate that cost into the purchase price.
The benefit is crystal clear. It's accurate budgeting, it's avoiding downtime, and it's making sure your investment actually works from day one. You turn a potential trap into a managed investment.
And then once you have your current inventory assessed and your new equipment vetted, you face the next big challenge. You have a long list of fixes, but a limited budget.
The classic problem.
Exactly. You need an objective, defensible roadmap.
Okay.
And this is the heart of strategic planning, the risk reduction prioritization program.
I really love this program because it provides objective machine risk scoring. It takes the subjectivity and, frankly, the facility politics out of the equation. It gives leadership a clear roadmap they can actually stand behind.
That is the key. How does a manager decide where to put the $50,000 budget? On the machine that's rarely used but poses a catastrophic risk, or the one that's a minor risk but is used constantly?
Right.
The on-site evaluation uses a practical, weighted scoring system based on 4 key factors to answer that very question.
Okay, lay out those 4 factors for us. Help us understand how they work together to create that score.
The framework is, I think, elegant in its simplicity, but really powerful in how it combines these things. So first, they look at exposure. How much do workers actually interact with a hazard? Is it a constant thing in high-volume production or a rare task like quarterly maintenance?
Yeah.
Higher exposure means a higher base risks.
Okay, so that's basically frequency and number of workers. What's number 2?
Second is severity. How serious could an injury be? This ranges from, minor cuts or repetitive strain all the way up to amputation or catastrophic failure. If the potential is catastrophic, that factor heavily weights the score.
Okay, severity and exposure give us a pretty good snapshot, but I feel like we often see those low-severity, high-frequency hazards get ignored.
You're exactly right. Which brings us to the third factor, frequency of the hazardous event itself. How often does the hazard actually occur under normal operating conditions? And finally, the fourth factor is ease of access. How easily can people physically get to the dangerous areas? This looks at the effectiveness of your controls. Physical guards, interlocks, even training. Good guarding reduces the score. Poor guarding raises it.
That is a really practical framework. Exposure, severity, frequency, and access. Can you give us an example of how that calculation actually forces a decision in practice?
Sure, let's take two machines. Machine A is an old but reliable shear press. If it fails, the severity is catastrophic amputation. But it has excellent fixed guarding, and only a specialized team uses it once a week. The score might be moderately high because of severity.
Okay.
Machine B is a conveyor line used constantly by 20 different assembly workers. The severity is low, maybe minor pinch points, but the exposure and frequency are through the roof.
In the emotional, unmanaged scenario, leadership might just point to the scary press.
Precisely. But the objective scoring might reveal that the constant high-frequency, high-exposure risk of that conveyor line, even with lower severity, results in a higher overall weighted score.
So the conveyor gets the budget first.
It has to. You have to address the highest probability of risk first to protect the greatest number of workers. It just makes business sense.
And what's the outcome for the client?
They get a prioritized action plan, complete with photos, specific code citations, costed recommendations. It's a clear, objective roadmap for planning upgrades, often over multiple budget cycles. And you can defend that budget to the CFO because it's driven by quantified risk, not just someone's opinion.
All right, let's pivot significantly now for phase 3. We've covered the hard machinery, the strategic planning, but safety and efficiency also really depend on the day-to-day routine of the people operating the equipment. So we're moving beyond the machinery to the human element with the Green Zone ergonomic workstation assessment.
This transition is crucial. Safety isn't just about massive catastrophic hazards. It's about optimizing those routine, high-volume tasks that teams do every single day.
And this assessment focuses specifically on lower risk, high volume production tasks, right?
Exactly. The kind of repeated motions that lead to soft tissue injuries and cumulative trauma over time.
And what does that structured review actually include? What are they looking at on an assembly line or a packaging station?
They conduct a review that focuses on the practical physical interface between the worker and the task. So that includes work height, reach zones, posture, the tools being used, the task layout, and the flow of material, minimizing unnecessary lifts or awkward rotations.
So the goal here is finding those simple, often low-cost adjustments that deliver these massive wins in efficiency, comfort, and ultimately reduce long-term health claims.
That's it. For example, a simple recommendation like raising an assembly bench 6 inches to eliminate a constant shoulder lift for every single component. They can cut micro-traumas by a huge margin. It's about optimizing the workspace.
This sounds incredibly useful for reducing long-term costs, but we need to be really clear about the scope. This is not a medical consultation, correct?
Absolutely correct. That's a vital piece of context here. This Green Zone review is a practical, operational review. It critically does not include things like skeletal modeling, clinical ergonomic testing, or any kind of individual health-based reporting. It's not diagnosing physical ailments.
So it's about optimizing the physical setup of the task and the workstation for better overall performance and reduced strain for the average worker. It keeps the deliverable manageable and targeted?
Precisely. It gives management the tools to make physical adjustments to the environment without needing individual medical histories. It keeps the focus strictly on engineering and workflow.
What an incredible amount of ground we've covered. It's so clear that managing machine safety effectively is.
Well, it's a dynamic process that touches every part of an organization. It really does. And if we synthesize everything we've talked about, the physical systems, the financial investments, the human element, the core insight is that safety is fundamentally driven by quantified objective data.
Right.
It's about shifting from that costly, dangerous, reactive approach to one where planning is paramount and built on verifiable metrics.
We've seen how these services provide that verified baseline for compliance, ensure new equipment is safe before you even buy it, and give you that objective scoring system for long-term investment.
Which I think raises an important final question for you, the listener, to consider. We spent a good bit of time on that risk reduction prioritization program. It uses 4 practical factors to score machine risk.
Worker exposure, potential injury severity, hazard frequency, and ease of access.
Exactly. Those 4 pillars for prioritizing change. So here's the thought. If we can apply those 4 specific factors to objectively prioritize safety upgrades on a factory floor, what other areas in your business or maybe even in your personal life could benefit from applying that same framework?
To prioritize necessary investment or critical change. Think about it. Where are you most exposed? Where is the potential downside most severe? How often does the problem occur, and how easily can you address it? That's how you build a safer, more predictable future, whether it's in your operations or your portfolio.